Hello. Welcome to our coaching call for the 5th of May, 2022. Things are progressing so quickly. So for the agenda, we are continuing our series on exploring the ICH GCPs, and then we're starting a brand new foundational course today. It's inspired by Neville Goddard's The Power of Awareness. And we're going to be talking about the concept of I am. So study management week 18, IRB, IEC, institutional review boards, and independent ethics committees, or not and. Okay, let us proceed. So one of the main takeaways from this is just that the IEC or the IRB maintains oversight over the clinical research site. So basically, they're making sure that safeguarding the right, safety, and well-being of all trial subjects. And then they also have to pay attention to trials that include vulnerable subjects. You can take a look at vulnerable subjects, minors, prisoners, people who are not being exploited for the purpose of participating in clinical trials, okay? And then they have to, of course, look at all the clinical trial documents. I mean, they have oversight, right, over the clinical research facility. And so they're looking at the protocol or any amendments, the informed consents, subject recruitment materials, the investigator brochure, any safety information. So it's just an ongoing dialogue with the IRB. The site has to be approved by the IRB before they conduct any procedures. So that's how it is actually set up. And then they also have to review the proposed trial within a reasonable time frame. They have to document in writing what they've identified, and they have to decide if it's favorable, if there are modifications required prior to approval, if they don't think it's a good idea to approve the trial at a clinical research site. And of course, they have to be aware of any termination or suspension. Other responsibilities include qualifying clinical research investigators, right? They would have to have their CV and their license because, you know, they're ensuring the safety of clinical trial subjects. And so they're not going to be approving an investigator who has no experience or who has a history of maybe has been debarred before and there's certain issues. So that's something that they actually look at. And then they also, you know, the investigator also submits a yearly report, which typically talks about, you know, what has been going on at the clinical trial site. And this, of course, is based on the IRB charter. But at minimum, they do ongoing reports, right? And just that way, the IRB is assessing if the trial is going as planned, if there are any issues that they should be aware of. And then when in some cases, when you have a non-therapeutic trial, they also look at that. So they really, basically, their oversight over the clinical research site. I mean, you can go and look at the ICH GCPs and get more details, but basically there's certain, they have to review the investigator's CV. They have to make sure that there is periodic reporting to know what is going on, and they have to ensure the rights and safety and well-being of clinical trial subjects. Then they also have to make sure that, you know, patients are consented properly. If it's a minor, of course, you know, they would have a legally authorized representative, or the assent, which is the consent for a minor, that, you know, it's there's proper oversight and that it's actually being administered properly. Okay. And they also have to make sure that, you know, in case of emergency situations, there are procedures that have been put in place for that. And then they also review the amount of the payments that are being submitted to clinical trial subjects, right? We talked about those vulnerable populations. I mean, if you have a population that is like a prison population and you want to pay them to participate in a clinical trial study or not, right? So there's just certain things that they really pay attention to prior to approving a facility to conduct clinical trials per the proposed protocol. And they also, of course, if you're paying a subject, we have to look at the schedule of payments, which has to be set forth in the informed consent. So that's really it. The IRB IEC maintains oversight over the clinical research facility. We will be continuing this next week. And they ensure that patients, the rights and well-being of patients, you know, is being maintained. And then, of course, there's safety. So doing that, we have to make sure that all the documents that are being utilized by the clinical research site in terms of, patient safety, they have to review those. They have to make sure that, the people who are actually conducting this study have the experience to conduct it, and, and that the investigator is maintaining adequate oversight over his facility. So, and a clinical trial cannot proceed if the IRB or IEC has not approved it for it to proceed at that clinical research site. Now, let us talk about Neville Goddard here. His amazing book, which is called The Power of Awareness. It's just an incredible book. And the purpose of these teachings, I always say, is that, we talk about clinical trials, but I always like to end with a foundational teaching that's going to cause you to look at your world in a completely different way. I just find that, these concepts are just embedded in that I have a better understanding of things when my mind is expansive. And so in week 1 of Neville Goddard's The Power of Awareness, what he says is that consciousness is one, okay, and but it's manifesting in different ways. So it could be a human being, a rock, it could be a cow, it could be a mountain, a lake, an ocean, but it's one consciousness that is expressing itself in so many different ways, and that it is not a divided consciousness, right? So the one consciousness is one, but it's expressing in different ways, right? And so many times we mistake the expression of consciousness or the divine as what the divine is. And so we think we're separated, right? I'm separated from everybody else. There's distinction between every single thing. I don't belong, or whatever it is. So Neville Goddard says that you may conceive yourself to be a rich man, a poor man, a beggar man, a thief, but at the center of our being, at the center of our being, everything remains the same. So regardless of what concept that I hold of myself, at the center of manifestation, there's only one I am, manifesting in legions of form concepts of itself. And I am that I am. Okay, that I am, you can't just say am, right? So you just say I am. It's that I that, so you have the I that is the one consciousness that is amming, if I can say that. And so it's coming forth through life as different aspects of yourself. And even in your life, as your consciousness, you're living your life wearing so many different hats, right? And so I am, Goddard says, is that feeling of permanent awareness, that at the very center of consciousness is the feeling of I am. I may forget who I am, where I am, what I am, but I can never forget I am. The awareness of being remains regardless of the degree of forgetfulness of who I am, where I am, and what I am. So even people who have Alzheimer's, amnesia, if you fell down and hit your head and something happened and you lost all your memory, you still are I am, you're still that consciousness. Now, you might not be aware, but it doesn't mean that you're not. So that's really important. And so there are many situations where sometimes we feel that, I have a challenge in my life and it's going to be very difficult for me to overcome it. Yes, you can, because there is a grander self that is capable of resolving everything. And that grander self does not depend on how you're moving through the world, whether you're sleepwalking or you're being unconscious. It doesn't really matter, because there's that is always there. So the greatest discovery, of course, is that man is actually, or woman, good or bad, man or woman is actually the arbiter of their faith. And that is it. It is your concept of yourself that will determine the world that you live in, right? And this concept of yourself are your reactions to life. So if I think that I am a dog, I'm going to start barking, I'm going to start, going outside, right? To use the lawn, to excrete things, right? So it's your concept of yourself. Whatever you think that you are, that is how you're going to react to life. And so perception is key. It's never really what is actually happening. It's what we think of what is happening. Really, it's never. I mean, that's why we all have so many different ways of looking at the world. And so you are the arbiter of your fate. And that is the truth. And it's the concept of yourself that determines everything. It's not backwards. Things are not happening. The effect is not happening. And then you're like, oh, I have to go to the cause. You are the cause, and then the effects come to the world. And in this state of consciousness is the way that we actually understand the phenomena of life. You know, life is not happening to us and we're passively reacting to it. We are the creator of the experiences in our life. And so our life now formulates to reflect, right, what our thinking is and what our reactions are. And that if the concept of yourself would be different, everything in your world would be different. So I think about whenever I want to do something or attract something or work on a vision, I always envision myself already as that which I want to be, because that is what is going to draw the things that I need, right? It's going to draw all the answers. It's going to draw all the solutions to me. But if I think that I'm somebody who does not know how to resolve things, who's constantly facing challenges, then my world would take that form, that concept that I actually have. So there was only one I am, right? There was consciousness expressing itself in so many different ways. And your consciousness, so however you choose to embody or to see yourself, that is what will be reflected in your world. So I am is infinite, right? It's an infinite thing, whether you call it God, energy, subconscious mind, it doesn't really matter. It's an infinite substance that is constantly expanding. And we're only displaying a limited aspect of it. So we're a limited aspect of an infinite substance. But many times we're so caught up with that limited fact that we can't really move forward in life, because I mean, I'm this being, a matter in this body that is actually defined. It's an illusion, right? But I'm actually an infinite being in an infinite universe. And so what I really love about this is that what it really occurred to me that life is really the movement from the finite to the infinite. That's why we're here. We're here to express joy, but it's like we're living in an illusion, but we know deep down that there was something bigger, there's something more, right? You know, you've had this situation where you have some incredible ideas. They're just amazing. And you know in your mind that you can actually do that. Like whatever idea you have, whatever desire, you know it can come through. But then you look at your life and think, how am I going to do that? Because I'm limited. So once you realize that it is not your place to start figuring out what is going to happen, your place is to know that the I am, your I, that consciousness is expressing itself in a finite body. So you always want to go back to, who am I really? The ultimate question that we ask ourselves is, who am I? Always. And you're not asking it to even get an answer. If you always ask yourself, who am I? Then it's going to cause a doorway of different possibilities to open. So that's week one of I am. And it's something that one has to listen to and sit with. And so for this week, we're talking about the IRB for clinical trials, the IRB and the IEC, and what their role is. We're starting off with that. And then, of course, we're talking about Neville Goddard's, his idea of I am, you know, and as you can see, they all link together. You know, we have different concepts of ourselves. You know, there was an aspect of me that is a clinical trials global consultant. And yet there is another aspect of me that enjoys these concepts. You know, I talk about the Yoga Sutras, and that's something that I enjoy very well. And so there's so many different aspects of you, knowing that you are an infinite being that has been expressed in a finite body. Okay, so that's it for this week. Don't forget to join us for our monthly calls. That's really important. They occur once a month, and we send invitations out starting a week before. So make sure to join that. That way you can benefit from getting your questions answered and getting additional feedback. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.